When George Washington delivered his farewell address in 1796, he wasn't just stepping down as the first president of the United States. He was laying out a vision for a young nation. Over 200 years later, his ideas continue to influence America. But what exactly did Washington envision, and how does it still shape us today? To understand Washington's vision, we first need to step into his shoes. The Revolutionary War had ended, but the real challenge had just begun. 13 states, each with its own interests, struggled to find common ground. The Articles of Confederation, the nation's first attempt at governance, were failing miserably. There was no strong central authority, and economic chaos loomed. Washington was not just a military hero but a unifying figure who had seen the cost of disunity firsthand. At the Constitutional Convention of 1787, he presided with a quiet but firm presence, understanding that without a solid framework for governance, the nation he fought to create could collapse. When Washington took office as the first president in 1789, he faced unprecedented challenges. There were no models to follow, no precedents to guide him. Every decision he made, from establishing a federal judiciary to implementing the first national bank, set the foundation for a functioning government. But by 1796, weary from public life and eager to return to his farm at Mount Vernon, Washington knew it was time to step aside. Instead of simply leaving, he chose to offer the nation one final gift, his farewell address. He outlined 3 key principles he believed were essential for America's survival: national unity, caution in foreign affairs, and the promotion of civic virtue. Washington's first and perhaps most urgent plea was for unity. He warned against the dangers of regionalism and political factions, writing, "The unity of government is a main pillar in the edifice of your real independence." His fears were not unfounded. During the Revolutionary War, the colonies had been deeply divided, often prioritizing their local interests over the collective good. Even during his presidency, tensions between the North and South, and between Federalists and Anti-Federalists, threatened to tear the country apart. One striking example of Washington's leadership in promoting unity came during the Whiskey Rebellion of 1794. Farmers in western Pennsylvania, angry over a federal tax on whiskey, staged an armed revolt. This wasn't just a protest, it was a direct challenge to the authority of the new government. Washington's response was swift and decisive. He federalized the militia and, in a historic move, personally led troops to Pennsylvania to quell the rebellion. This marked the only time a sitting U.S. president has commanded troops in the field. His actions sent a powerful message: the rule of law must prevail, and the federal government had the authority to enforce it. Today, Washington's call for unity remains as relevant as ever. In a time of increasing polarization, his words remind us that America's strength lies in its ability to bridge divides. The second pillar of Washington's vision was a warning against permanent foreign alliances. He advised, "It is our true policy to steer clear of permanent alliances with any portion of the foreign world." This wasn't isolationism, it was pragmatism. Washington had witnessed the destructive power of European conflicts. Britain and France, the 2 superpowers of his day, were locked in a bitter struggle, and both sought to drag the young United States into their orbit. In 1793, Washington issued the Proclamation of Neutrality, declaring that the U.S. would remain impartial in the conflict between Britain and France. It was a controversial decision, but Washington understood that the fledgling nation could not afford to be entangled in a foreign war. His stance set a precedent that would shape American foreign policy for over a century. Even today, his cautionary words echo in debates about military interventions and international alliances. They remind us to carefully weigh the costs of foreign entanglements against their potential benefits. Finally, Washington emphasized the importance of civic virtue. He believed that the success of the Republic depended not on its leaders but on the character and involvement of its citizens. He wrote, "Virtue or morality is a necessary spring of popular government." Washington understood that democracy was a fragile experiment, one that required an engaged and informed populace to thrive. Throughout his life, Washington led by example. After 2 terms as president, he voluntarily stepped down, despite widespread calls for him to remain in power. In doing so, he established a precedent for the peaceful transfer of power, a cornerstone of American democracy. His actions were a stark contrast to the monarchies of Europe, where leaders clung to power at all costs. Washington's humility and commitment to the greater good set a standard for future generations. Today, his call for civic virtue challenges us to reflect on our own roles as citizens. Are we informed voters? Are we participating in our communities? Are we holding our leaders accountable? These questions lie at the heart of Washington's vision for America. As we look back on George Washington's farewell address, it's clear that his vision was not just for his time but for all time. His warnings about division, foreign entanglements, and the importance of civic engagement continue to resonate in a rapidly changing world. But his vision wasn't just about warnings, it was about hope. Washington believed in the potential of the American experiment, in the idea that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people could endure. Today, as we navigate the challenges of our era, his words remind us of the principles that built this nation and the responsibility we all share in preserving them. So, what do you think? Are we living up to George Washington's vision for America? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more explorations into the ideas that shaped our world.